All right, good afternoon. We're here to look at the Annenberg Networks Network research agenda. I'm presenting. My name is Kristen Gruth on behalf of Peter Manji, Janet Folk, Manuel Castells, Lian Jian, and Ame Yang. So those are our research faculty members, and we're going to go into the research agenda. So Annenberg Networks Network, our website is ascnetworksnetwork.org if you want to check us out online. Our research agenda supports theoretical, methodological, and empirical research efforts exploring the structure and dynamics of communication networks. So we draw upon many social scientific perspectives as well as, primarily in communication, sociology, psychology, political science, and organization science. We emphasize a multi-theoretical, multi-level, multi-dimensional approach to network research. So we're going to go through some examples of network analysis. We have telecommunication networks. This is a graph of the internet backbone, and it's quite vast. So these networks can range in size, and we'll look at a couple of examples, but this one depicts a large amount of data. So it looks kind of hard to discern what's going on in that picture. Social networks, we can have this is top conservatives on Twitter. And it was created using NodeXL, which is an open system to look at networks. But this is how they communicate on Twitter, who's important. So if you look at the center, those are the people that are densely connected, meaning they are very well connected with others in this conservative network. The people on the periphery are those that are less well connected, but still included in the network.
That isn't geographically, there's no geographic component to that.
Correct, yes. This is just based on the communication that is going on in the Twitter network. Yeah. This political blog networks graph has been passed around for a couple of years now. Lada Adamic and Glantz produced this in 2005, and this is the blog network between conservatives and liberals on the internet. And then we have a little bit of mashing in between, but what we see is the linking in between is much less a concentration of these networks. We have a lot of linking of conservatives to conservatives and liberals to liberals. There's a little bit of that crossover in that middle, the gold area. But there's a lot of people in the periphery that are sometimes linked in by these more dominant actors in the center. This article was produced by Castells and one of his colleagues in 2008, and this depicts the media network. So this is a smaller network in terms of the other nodes that we were looking at, but each of these major nodes, Yahoo, Time Warner, Disney, Viacom, NBC, Google, CBS, etc., these are all the major players in the media network, and then representing who and where their holdings are. So in Europe, Asia, Africa, Middle East, Latin America, and North America, exactly who are the main players that they're connecting with. For instance, Walt Disney is connected with ESPN and Lifetime because they own them. So, and then you have the percentage of the lines is how strong those relations are in this network. In the semantic network, we have networks based on words, and this is a way to graph, kind of like a Wordle when you look at how many words, what's being discussed, but this is how they're connected. So how are those words mentioned with other words? Not just what is mentioned and what's its popularity or density, but how they're mentioned in conversation and what do we often see together. So this is one for a thesaurus think map on network. So this is our actual network graph of the presentation, and we're going to go through each of these different nodes. The central node is Annenberg Networks Network, but as a little pun in our network presentation, we have each of these nodes represent a part of our presentation. So our faculty, our primary investigators, include the 5 names that I mentioned before: Peter Manji, Janet Folk, Manuel Castells, Ame Yang, and Lian Jian. And you can contact them all at these email addresses. And these are the different faculty. So Manuel Castells, Janet, and Peter are co-directors of the network, Annenberg Networks Network. And then Ame and Lian are just coming on as new faculty, and they've been researching with us for about 2 years now. So our projects, the most interesting part of the Annenberg Networks Network is the projects that we have going on. So One of those projects is a joint venture with Northwestern University and Northeastern University, and it's through an NSF grant to study the collaborative research of understanding online creative collaboration and innovation over multidimensional networks. So often with this project, we have yet to examine how multidimensional networks and online communities enable large-scale creative collaboration. So Threadless.com is an online platform and commerce website for creative t-shirts. So for instance, on this image, you have the creative image that somebody has designed, and you can vote, so that's what the score it is. And you take those votes and they take the top designs and then they print them. So it's a business model for Threadless.com. It's an opportunity for designers to get their content out there, and it's a community in that I can participate even if I don't design. So we're looking at things like online community activity and offline consumer purchasing behavior, the interaction of peer influence and online opinion formation, as well as the economic consequences of this online activity. So we're excited to get that off the ground. Right now it's in its emergent stages. We've been talking a lot because it's interdisciplinary and across different universities. It's been an ongoing project for about a year now, a year and a half. Stack Overflow is a project that's emerged just within Annenberg Networks Network. And Stack Overflow is a question and answer website dedicated to programmers from a variety of languages, such as JSON, Python, that sort of thing. And this is different from things like Yahoo Answers because it's about producing a long-lasting knowledge repository through a user-contributed question and answer process. So we have this question and answer going on, and you can see on the top questions kind of what's bubbling up at the top, and then we have hot network questions on the side, but it tells you how it works at the top of the site. And this is a particular, a dominant project in Ann right now, so we're looking forward to research developing from this. Occupy Wall Street occurred a couple years ago, and we've scraped the network data on Twitter to look at social movements in particular. So this first project, leveraging Twitter for networked social movement about hashtag, virility, and symbolic power, was about identifying the mechanisms for leveraging social media to drive a networked social movement viral and achieve symbolic power. So we see the symbolic hand of the Occupy Wall Street, and that's great for its symbolic power visually. But what about its symbolic power in these networks that we see of communication, of what becomes important in a social movement, what defines it? And so we saw a couple of different changes in what was important in the hashtag Occupy Wall Street, or OWS. What bubbled up to the top was actually non-dominant media. So alternative media such as YouTube and other blogs and other things that were navigated and created by people that participated in Occupy Wall Street. So these hashtags were used to construct interest-based networks. These were temporarily bound, self-organized networks where membership was based on an interest in the information content or an interest in being included in the interest network of others. The second project that we looked at using the Occupy Wall Street data, and this is particularly Wenlin Liu, Pung Oh, and Rong Wang who investigated this, this kind of data set. This project used network gatekeeping theory to understand and assess if movement-related information was able to bypass information control. So again, it was that information control in the new media environment, kind of disabling or flooding the information gates about the social movement rather than mainstream media's agenda. So these are the specific cases that we used for Occupy Wall Street. The next projects that we looked at were the public media organizations, and this primarily comes out of the dissertation of one of our members, Sandy Evans, but there are a couple of us looking at these leadership and expertise networks for innovation. So this is particularly in digital media innovation. I'm on this project, Layla Bighash and Christy Hagan. We're all on these projects, and it's comparing leadership and expertise interorganizational networks among public broadcasting organizations. So that's such as NPR and PBS. Those are the ones that we think of. But they're different branches that they link to. There are different other private entities that they link to, so as the government would with contracting and that sort of thing. So we're interested in seeing which organizations do the public media think are the leaders in innovation. So we did quite a broad survey. And the types of entities that were perceived to be leaders were actually dominantly NPR. So that's why we see that NPR and NPR Digital kind of up at the right-hand corner making such a big play in this network. The colors mean different things. But I think the red is like specific stations. So we see a lot of different, like KCRW is in there, KPCC. But we see a lot of different, BBC, universities, New York Times. These are more established, traditional media that are the green nodes. So a lot of different things going on in this network graph, but it's looking specifically at public media and how that works for innovation. So the next section is our ANN-sponsored events. We have quite a number of events that happen during the year that ANN is involved in organizing and putting on. One that happened this year was a campus-wide network workshop led by Alex Levitt and Josh Clark. And they taught a full day on how to use R and Gephi to use these tools to produce networks. So based on relationships of a node between a node, and what does that mean for what your network picture looks like. There's all sorts of different theories that were gone over in this class for explaining the relationships and the structure of the network that we see. We have a couple of lecturers that we've brought in during the Annenberg Research Seminar talks, and the ones that we particularly sponsored were Paul Leonardi from Northwestern University at the School of Comm and the School of Management, Kellogg School of Management, Lada Adamek from the University of Mission iSchool, and Brian Utsi from the Kellogg School of Management. So all three came to give talks during the past academic year, and they have great entree into interesting topics that relate to networks. Lada and Brian particularly study networks. Paul doesn't study networks on as large of a scale. His interest is more in organizations and technology. And so we have quite a broad interest of topics in Annenberg Networks Network, mostly involving organizations.
So what did each one of these lecture on? What were their topics?
That is a great question, and I think that actually it's online, and I can get you that information later, definitely. I think Paul lectured on organizations and technology, in particular, how they change using a case of an automotive industry, and how that interplay works. Lada talked about memes and how they develop over time mathematically on things like Facebook, and comparing those memes to rumors. So how does information get populated? How do rumors get populated? Brian Utsi, I was not there for his talk, but I did review it. And it was about networks of collaboration in data science, and how do we see collaborators working together, and what is the kind of the sweet spot for having a group of collaborators to make something actually impact the way that we research. I think it was something like diminishing returns after 3 or 4 collaborators or something like that. But the sweet spot is around a couple. It's not the single social scientist anymore. It's a group of people that becomes the dominant norm for producing something that's really remarkable in research now. So all 3 talks brought interesting perspectives that we can consider for our research in networks in the lab. This is actually going on currently, right now as we speak, over at Kirchhoff Hall. And that's Kirchhoff Hall. It's a picture of Kirchhoff Hall. And it's the 6th International Seminar on Network Theory. This one focuses particularly on social networks in governmental and non-governmental sectors. And we have a couple of, we have several graduate students, but we have several faculty that have come in from different locations, different universities, to give talks on policy networks, on collaboration networks for health delivery, collaboration networks for NGOs and civil society, that sort of thing. Woody Powell will be giving our keynote tonight, and this conference will continue through to tomorrow afternoon. It is entirely sponsored and put on by ANN, so the Annenberg Networks Network. The next section is about our ANN partners. We have several partners around the country in different university settings. The first one of which is Sonic Lab at Northwestern. We work primarily with Nosh Contractor, the main PI there. And his lab, which is behind him in that picture, is the Sonic Lab, and it's about, again, studying networks. The Oxford Internet Institute brings that interesting dynamic of how do we study networks as they morph with online technology? So how do we study Twitter networks? How do we study Facebook networks? How do we study networks of corporations and NGOs when they hyperlink together? So we've got hyperlinks even. And so the Oxford Internet Institute provides a valuable resource for us and a valuable partnership in that we can collaborate and start to build new connections of making better social science. The Web Science Trust is an information knowledge resource where we all kind of get together and collaboratively online hear what is important research that's going on at different universities about web science and particularly networks. That involves a lot of networks. So this is something it's an institute that we participate in and we sponsor sometimes. I think we sponsored it last semester. Earlier this semester. The Delta Lab at Georgia Institute of Technology is led by Leslie DeChurch, who's over there on the left, and her students, and it's about developing effective leaders, teams, and alliances in groups. So she takes sort of the psychological idea of groups and looks at their networks online. And she has produced some really great, fantastic work with her lab students in networks. Matt Weber, former USC grad, is at Rutgers with the School of Communication and Information, and he has built a partnership with the Wayback Machine, the Internet Wayback Machine, and this is a website where you can go and look at any archival website that's been archived through this system, and you can see, let's say, Google as it was in 1996. You can see the New York Times as it was in 2001. You can see, any of these sites, if you go back and you say, enter in this URL, and it'll show you what it was. So it's called the Wayback Machine because it's like going back in time. So we're looking at this archive to glean 5 data sets right now of longitudinal data of changes in links over time. So a couple of the data sets are like media networks, how the media linked to each other. One of our data sets is on how Congress has linked, the congressional data set. Congress, meaning the Senate and the House, have linked together over the different congressional seasons. So right now we have the 109th, 110th, 111th, and 112th. And we're looking at how those links have been built and grown over time. And there's a couple of other data sets currently topicked on Hurricane Sandy and other disaster-related things that cause a lot of hyperlinks to be built as an emergent structure online. And so through this system, we can look back and see how were those systems created, how were those links and those networks built online, and what did that mean for the network of groups of media or groups of Congress people or groups of organizations that assisted in a disaster. So this is part of the Internet Wayback Machine, Internet Archive Wayback Machine project. And the Harvard Program on Networked Governance, we have a couple of graduate students there who are there in their postdocs. And this is about looking at different other kinds of big data networks and how that influences governance. The international conferences section of the presentation includes the Sun Belt, INSNA, which is the International Network for Social Network Analysis Conference. That's the society, but the conference is Sunbelt. We went to St. Petersburg this year, and these are the presentations that we gave. So you see here that we have a lot of different kinds of ways of looking at networks, from conflicting forces of networks to leadership and expertise, as I discussed. We have environmental coalition networks in the global civil society. We have opinion leaders and rumor diffusion on Twitter, multiplexity and evolution of community-based participatory interventions in healthcare delivery. and the influence of social capital in corporate social responsibility performance, as well as online gaming. And particularly, we bring in some large data sets from online games to look at group dynamics and how individual behavior changes in these networks. So virtually rich, conspicuous consumption in a virtual economy is set in a massive online game. The International Communication Association conference is coming up this May, and it's going to be in Seattle. And we have a couple of presentations from our group members there too. So we have, again, a virtual economy. We have climate narratives and how they've changed. We have competitor networks, social exchange and communal transactive memory systems, conspicuous consumption, leveraging Twitter again, network analysis of online collective action, the Super Bowl broadcasts, how those work, how audiences are involved with products and ad liking, and emoticons and perception of politeness. So we have quite a few members of our group that go out and actually present research developed or conceptually helped along in the lab to various outside-facing conferences and outside-facing audiences, which enables us to have a broader dialogue with not only our partners that we see at these conferences, but also, potential research collaborators, people with other ideas to bring to, the things that we're studying, as well as literature and meeting the researchers that have inspired us to do what we do. So if you have any more information, please contact us. This is our contact information, and there's a lot going on here, so I'll tell you. Our website is what this image is, and ascnetworksnetwork.org is the website. You can find us on Twitter at USC ANN, at USC ANN. And if you want to find this presentation, it's bit.ly /ANN2014 for our presentation this year. And then all of our email addresses are here. I'm happy to answer questions. My email address is kguth@usc.edu. Our faculty investigators are there as well. If you have any particular questions about their work, please look them up and feel free to get in touch. They're happy to answer questions, as am I. So that's it. This is the network of our research. It's the network that we hope fulfills the mission that we strive for, which is enabling more research on networks in Annenberg and enabling more discourse about networks outside of the university as well. So we have both an in-house presence and an external presence that we hope enables a lot of research and inspiration. So yeah, so that's our network, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are some of the graphics that you had in your presentation available to look at?
Like the graphs of the networks?
Yeah, or the graphic of the of who is. Let's see which one I wanted. The public media organizations graphic.
Sure.
The one about creative dominance or something. The one that had NPR on it.
And PBS, yeah. I can put you in touch with Sandy Evans. That's her dissertation topic, so she is much more of an expert and happy to discuss. She's actually going on to a job this year, and she'll be nearby in Pomona, Cal State Pomona. So super excited for her, and her research will continue, and thankfully she's still in the area, so she can answer any questions, I'm sure.
Those graphics, do they have attendant explanations of what the graphics mean?
No, well, I'm not sure. I think that's a part of her dissertation. She would go into it more in depth. I know that we're in the process of exploring expertise in leadership, in particular in those networks. And so we have a draft going, but it's not yet ready for public consumption, I'll say. But we do have, we have the intention of working on it over the summer and completing it for the fall. So, and there's 4 of us working on it, and any of us could answer questions about specifically what those graphs mean, but I think Sandy is the real expert on that one.
Okay. Sandy Evans.
Yep, and I can, give her email address to you anyway. Yep. Okay, thank you so much.